here on Serious Jewelry and XM93.
Welcome back to Golf School with Jim McLean and Jeff Warren. We're here with Terry Hashimoto, and we're talking BodiTrak and pressure mats. Terry, can we just quickly recap for the listeners out there exactly what we're talking about? When they're using these mats, what are they looking at? What are they seeing? What are they trying to accomplish?
With the golf pressure mat and the BodiTrak system, what we do is we capture the vertical forces, which basically is their weight distribution. We capture it moving in two directions, front to back and side to side. So we know the golfer's weight distribution throughout their swing, live, and it's very important because you want to know where your weight is. First of all, most golfers don't even know what their weight distribution is at address. So number one, we can focus in right from the beginning. What's your weight distribution at address? And then we can understand what your weight distribution is at the top of your swing. And we know what it should be, what your weight distribution should be on each foot, and also heel to toe at impact, which is very critical.
Well, Terry, we were speaking a little bit off the air on Chris Como's using your pressure mats, and now he's Tiger's new consultant. So, you have any comments on that?
Well, we haven't been able to get a hold of Chris lately. He's when I talked to him in May, last May, we were just he just gotten his first BodiTrak mat, and we were getting him all hooked up on a computer with it. And he heavily uses a guy named Dr. Satchel McKenzie for reference, and Dr. Satchel McKenzie is a BodiTrak advisor. He's in St. Francis Xavier University in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. It's tough to say for most people, including myself. But Satchel's a golf biomechanist, and I've learned not to say biomechanist. And Satchel's a genius, and he's been developing algorithms that can also be used to help use pressure for fitting footwear and doing other things. But it's big. Chris is going to be, I'm sure Chris Como will, I'm sure, I don't know, but I mean, it's just logical that Tiger, because he hired a guy that's, you know, not out of the blue. I mean, I'm not sure, but I'm sure Chris Como's bank account looks a heck of a lot different than it did a year ago, and is going to continue to grow. And all Chris talks about with him and Dr. Kwan and Dr. Satchel is you know, vertical forces, rotational forces, and weight and balance issues. I think that they're, you know, it's going to get kind of complicated. You know, me, I'm a dumb guy. I just like to keep it simple. To me, true genius is just keeping things really simple. Our guys, Robert Gold, I mean, man, he is stressed this. This guy was the founder of TechScan many years ago, and they had the first published article on the front page of Golf Digest with John Daly. So this guy knows pressure, and you know, we've stressed simplicity. And Jim, you know, you've been a big supporter of this. If it's complicated, you know, it's going to get lost. So we got to keep it simple.
Well, we've got a fellow online, we've got Addison in Florida.
Hey.
Good morning, Addison. You're on with Jim and Jeff and Terry. What can we do for you?
Hi, I'll be fine. Just a question for Terry. I was just wondering, in your studies with BodiTrak, what's the percentage of the average tour player's weight distribution from the top to back swing and through impact?
It's a great question, and it's funny because we got these stats off of Golf Digest from Sean Foley, and the stats indicated 80% of your weight distribution should be on your trail foot at the top of your swing, and then 80% of your weight should be on your lead foot at impact. And the typical address on tour was 55 lead foot, 45 trail foot percent. And we've been picking away at those stats for the last year, and they've held water. They are very accurate. In fact, I would go so far as to say that it's not possible to make good solid contact without having in and around 80% on your trail foot and 80% on your lead foot at impact. One thing that's different from the Golf Digest article is that with BodiTrak, we actually measure heel and toe pressure. So we can measure what percentage of your weight is on your heel and your toe. At the top of your weight, at the top of your swing just prior to transition, which is Jim taught me what transition was. It's important to understand transition. When that white dot's moving forward, you got to have you want a little bit more weight on your toe at that point. And the actual at address would be about 55 heel, 45 toe, with the weight moving from the ball to the toe, push it from the toe, moving to the lead foot in the middle of the lead foot. I hope that answers.
Well, Terry, Colorado, not to scare anybody, but tore all the ligaments in both knees, and that affected his quads, obviously, except his legs. And he was in a wheelchair and then a cast. And when he came back to play, one of the interesting things that I saw right away is his weight was going toward his right toe on his backswing, and it dramatically changed his golf swing. Dramatically, and like all athletes, he came back too soon, and it was a real struggle for Lenny to get to relearn the golf swing. So the feeling in your legs, the strengthening legs is also very important, and then the importance of proper weight transfer is so critical to swing playing and the power that you can deliver into a golf shot. We don't want people shifting to too far to the outside of their right foot, or moving their head too far, getting too much weight. But the BodiTrak gets you an address, which I feel is so important, because I know every tour player pretty much works on it every day of getting themselves balanced at address and getting the inside pressure on the leg. And once you get on a BodiTrak and you see how far off you might be at address, it's kind of shocking to people because they think they are 50-50.
Well, and Jim, I mean, this is the craziest part. I mean, I went to school, University of Miami. I graduated in '81. We had Nathaniel Crosby, the U.S. amateur champion on our golf team. And I've been going to Durrell a long, long time. And, I love it out there and love being a part of your organization. But the point I'm trying to make here in a long-winded way is that it amazes me when I ask a golf pro what your weight distribution is. They look at me and they go, I'm not sure. And now, your team, they all know. And you got to know this if you want to be an instructor. Heck, you can't even push back in a truck legally if you don't know your weight and balance, and you can't certainly find an aircraft that doesn't know what their weight and balance is upon departure. It's just not possible. And Venturi, all he did was teach the setup. I mean, he wouldn't even look at me if I didn't set up properly. So I think you're absolutely onto something there, Jeff.
Well, you got a really interesting system here that, like we said, it's portable inside, outside, and what we've been using a long time here is accurate. It gives the player, immediate feedback that they can see on the TV screen right in front of them. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and then you can make a change very quickly when they can actually see it, and then eventually very quickly feel a good setup position and a good move back, and then of course transitions, which Jeff alluded to, transition being a major thing that I've taught people since I learned really learned a lot of my golf from Jackie Burke and Ken Venturi and Mr. Harmon when he was at Morningside out in the desert when I was out at Tamarisk. How important they felt. And these guys were not only great players, they also taught a lot. Harry Cooper's in the Hall of Fame. Nobody knows anymore who that is, but Harry was taught for 70 years, plus he was one of the greatest tour players of his generation. Played a ton with Hogan and Bobby Jones, but those guys intuitively know what you're teaching on BodiTrak.
Well, I got goosebumps when you said that, because not the BodiTrak thing, but about the old pros being such great teachers. We've lost that, and a part of my goal is to bring it back to the pro, to get them to be able to do something that was originally part of their structure or part of their job. I mean, if you don't know weight and balance, you don't know golf. And you've been talking about weight and balance for decades. And I think that's the difference between a great teacher and just an okay teacher, because you've got to be able to set the golfer up in the correct position. And the beauty of this, Jeff, Jim, is that there are different weight distribution patterns that work for different shots, for your lob shot, for your sand shot. I love going, I really want to get Gary Player in the sand track with BodiTrak. I mean, that would be sort of one off the bucket list if I ever got that opportunity. I mean, what does he do differently than most of us besides hit it and knock one out of every 5 in the cup? I mean, there's a reason why he's so good at that shot, and it's because his balance is superb. And I'd like to see that with Phil Mickelson when he does one of those crazy shots over his head. And why does another guy hit the ball so good with his driver and so lousy with his irons? We're about to unravel all of that. And Jim, you're going to be one of the guys that teaches us how to do this correctly.
Terry, we're going to take a quick break here. We got one more segment, so I've got quite a few questions I want to hit you with. We'll be right back at Golf School. Jim McLean and Jeff Warren. We're talking to Terry Hashimoto on pressure forces and pressure plates right here on Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio.
All right, guys, 3 minutes.
One of the